Welcome to the Worship Leader Toolbox podcast, where our mission is to equip and encourage worship leaders and teams in practical components of local church leadership. We're so thrilled to have you listening to our podcast, and our prayer is that it's helpful for you and your teams. If you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to reach out to us at worshipleadertoolbox.com, and we'd also be honored to have you hit subscribe wherever you're listening to us. Heading now to today's episode with Tim Price.
Hey, welcome today, all the listeners on the Worship Leader Toolbox podcast. I'm here in our quote studio, quote, with Tim Batts, a new friend I've met. Tim has been a listener of the podcast, and then we got connected and thought we would just talk a little bit today and share a little bit. And how are you doing, Tim?
I'm doing good, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Good. Yeah, when you have the same name, it's always funny to talk
Absolutely.
back and forth. Tell us a little bit about yourself, just in a nutshell, for who you are.
Yeah, cool. Well, I appreciate that. I live in far western Kentucky, and I have been involved in some kind of media or production most of my life. But I currently just have I have my own business. I do audio production and event audio and video production and music promotion and stuff like that. I represent a few artists. I'm heavy in the bluegrass music scene. Of course, I am in Kentucky. We're the bluegrass state, so I got to do that, right? But so that's what I do for a living. I have in the past always been heavily involved in church, raised in church, and I have done everything from, sing on a praise team to be the media director of a large church. So I've kind of been there and seen lots of things.
That's awesome. And really, it's a lot of stories that people have that they have, especially in the world of arts and music and ministry. There's just a lot of hats that people wear and a lot of different avenues that people have served. And to be able to use your gifts in that is awesome.
Oh, absolutely. There's so many roles that are involved in church. And, I've seen it all. I've been in every kind of church imaginable, every denomination, everything you could possibly see in a church. Over the years, I've seen it. And there's so much that goes on people don't realize. So.
Yeah. You mentioned the production of the bluegrass music stuff. Tell us quickly where people find that if they were interested.
Yeah, so I have a podcast myself called the Hometown Bluegrass Show, and so me and a local bluegrass celebrity. He's a 20-time bluegrass guitar player of the year and very popular in the bluegrass scene. His name is Josh Williams. We live close to each other and known each other a long time. We do a podcast together, and called the Hometown Bluegrass Show. You can find that on all of Spotify and Apple and YouTube, and then also do a local bluegrass music radio show here around the Paducah, Kentucky area on a local classic country station. So every Sunday night I play an hour of bluegrass music. So,
Wow.
But you can find all that stuff out at my website, timbatts.com. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you were on staff at a church, a volunteer at a church, and then you're currently just part of a church. So
Yes.
you just volunteer and those type of things there as well.
Yeah, right now I'm just really kind of involved in the music. It's all started really, I guess, back in the late 90s. I developed a passion for photography and mainly wildlife photography, and it kind of grew into eventually owning my own camera store and having my own video production business. And I just kind of snowballed from there. And then I got into playing bluegrass music and playing music and stuff. And so, I've sang in church and done all those things. And now I've just kind of settled in at my church where I just play guitar on the praise band, and we just do a little singing and have fun with that. So
That is cool. Well, I like all the varied experiences. That's really awesome. And you mentioned photography, and what I thought we could do for this episode here is just take a few minutes to throw out some random thoughts about some of these areas. And so we'll just start with photography. Where have you experienced that or seen that be most effective for the church?
What I've seen personally is just using photography as a way to grab kind of what I would call candid stills of the people from the church just doing the things they do, whether they're in the middle of a worship service, hands raised, really worshiping deep, or whether they're just with their family at a fall festival event that the church is having, or something like that. I think it's important for people who maybe don't go to church there, even the people who do, to see when you capture a still image of what goes on. You can use those in promotional videos. You can use them in your social media posts and all those type things. And I think it just shows the true heart of the church when you see people.
And it's you can show a picture of a building, but
Right.
and that's good for a certain slice of things. But if you really want to see the life of the church, you have to have people in there.
Right.
Otherwise, you just have this, sterile kind of setup.
Right,
And
exactly. When I go to a website of a church that I want to learn more about, or maybe visit or whatever, I want to go. I want to see pictures of people doing things that the church offers, and kind of see how they're enjoying it. And I don't know, it just brings more of a personal feel to it to me.
Yeah, and you mentioned people that are in the church even may like it. And that is true that sometimes some of the marketing quote that we do for churches is for the enthusiasm of the people who are already part of the church, and just their opportunity to, share some sort of post that they're on or a part of, or family picture, or serving as a worship band member or whatever. All those things are neat for the people who are involved in it, as well as for people who might not know anything about the church.
Right, exactly. I have a real marketing mindset. So if you look, I know on my Facebook feed, I follow a lot of local churches, and most of them just post once a week, and that's Sunday morning when they go live. During the week, there's never any other things of the midweek service or the children's program, or seeing kids have fun, learning about the Lord and things like that. And I think just like a business, it's important to post regularly and see those type of images so people can get a better feel what your church is like.
Definitely. And just the encouragement and scripture and reminders that can be in there as well. Not even counting the photos, which always are a good springboard for
right
good, resource to post.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, most churches can't afford to pay somebody to do those things, and then the ones who are volunteering to do it a lot of times get burnt out or they forget, and then 9 times out of 10 is probably the pastor's wife, and she gets tired of doing it. So
yeah, you do have to be intentional in order to get it to happen.
Absolutely.
What about videos in that regard? You mentioned putting together videos with the stills. What kinds of things have you experienced in terms of how churches can enhance video? There's 2 realms here. One is just the straight live feed, and the other is other things that video can do. But,
yeah, most churches just take advantage of video through their live feed, and that could be anything from just multi-camera shoot, live streaming through a switcher and all these fancy programs, or setting up a phone and Facebook Live, and so. But videos, we live in a video world, so they tell such a great story. But I have used videos in the past from, of course, everything from a full TV show to live stream to doing little promotional things. Let's say the kids have a program, that maybe the folks in the main sanctuary don't see what they're doing in the youth building, and they've had a special thing. Shoot some video of that, and then see if the pastor will take time to let you play this little 3-minute clip of what goes on in the youth building. A lot of people will come to church every week and not really know the cool things that's happening with the kids, so.
That's really true. Yeah, it gives people an insight. I know pastors, in a lot of senses, are really, pastors want to rely on videos in a sense for during worship, little segments like you just mentioned, for sure, live feed to work well, and for the possibility of just promotional kind of things that happen social media otherwise. But it is true that it's hard for pastors to think about who's going to do that, because the expertise and time involved, it's a leap, because going from volunteer to full-time paid staff, it takes quite a bit. So
yes.
Is it you think it's hard for pastors to figure out is there a middle ground step in there anywhere?
Yeah, I think it depends on the pastor. Honestly, if you got a young techie pastor, he might appreciate it. But a lot of the little rural churches may have an older pastor that's not really been involved in tech type stuff, and they don't know. When I was on staff, our pastor was pretty young, but he wasn't real techie, and he had no idea the amount of time it took to to shoot and edit a video. And so I made him sit with me and watch me and for hours. And, I didn't let him leave until I was done so he could see the time it takes. So he didn't like that, but I said, you're going to watch me edit this.
Yeah, that would be funny sitting there. I do know that our pastor has a pretty good question. He always says, what would it take to, and then he goes on with the request. And that opens the door for people to be able to say, well, we could do it, but I'd have to set some things aside for the rest of this week to pull that off,
Right.
or whatever the thing is. And I've always thought that was a good question for anybody, really. What does it take to do this? It lets people have input before saying yes or no.
Right.
Opportunity to
that's
discuss
a good way
it a
to
little
word
bit.
it. Yeah, for sure. But if you want to get into video and do those things, you could start with just shooting some video with your phone or a small camera, and then just pick a song, a cool upbeat worship song that's short, and then just put the clips to that song, kind of like a music video. And that way you don't have to worry about recording audio and lighting and all that. And that's a neat way to jump into it and make a big impact.
Yeah. And these days with Reels and all the little apps and opportunities on Facebook, Instagram, social media in general, they almost create the video for you. I mean, and especially those description type things where you have some photos of an event, add a song to it and go for it. And
Absolutely.
so you can really have an impact with that. You've been in different churches, you said, and different setups. And then I think when we talked, you even mentioned that you've been in a mobile church, like church plant type setup, except it was a established church that rented a space.
Mm-hmm.
And what are some of the just highlights of that you recall or think about when encouraging people who are in worship ministry portable spaces, which is a huge chunk of modern churches, rented space and portable space.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of churches that do that, and there's that excitement of, our church is growing and we're expanding, and we should go to a bigger space and rent that. But then the practicality of it, when you get into it, then the volunteers have to show up with trailers at the church, at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning and load all the stuff up and carry it to the venue, then set it all up. And, so we had volunteers, that were over the setting up all the nursery stuff, because you've got to have things for the kids. And, of course, as the media director, I had to make sure the cameras were there and the sound stuff was there and the video switcher and all that. And so it is a huge undertaking, even for the smallest church.
Yeah. And it's not, it doesn't just happen. It requires a lot of effort, a lot of manpower.
A servant's heart for volunteers to do that and pull it off. Yes.
So this is shotgun approach. I know we're kind of following rabbit trails here, but volunteers, is that something that you've been a volunteer coordinator and you've been a volunteer, it sounds like, in multiple settings? Which one do you like better? You like getting volunteers or being a volunteer?
Well, I like being the boss. I'm not going to lie. I do like coordinating the volunteers. And so both have their challenges, but obviously as a volunteer, it's not quite the pressure, but when you're coordinating a group of volunteers as a staff member, it can be challenging just texting everybody and make sure they get there. 'Cause when I did it, it was kind of before the days of Worship Planner and all these cool programs that maybe make things a little bit easier, but it's still hard. It's just, last minute, someone may not be there for emergency or sickness or something. So it's not easy, but it's fun.
Yeah, that's cool. I know that there's an element of leadership in the church that kind of gets you into a fix at times because you, at one point may have been in charge of something and now all of a sudden you're not, and you're just kind of sitting there, but you have the background of knowing what it takes to do live stream and lyrics on the wall and praise bands together. And sometimes that makes it kind of hard to sit and worship because you're thinking of everything. At least some certain people are wired up that way. Does that ever come to you?
Oh, yes, Lord. My wife gets so frustrated with me because I can't hardly sit in a church and not think about those things because I have been a volunteer and a staff member doing it so long. That's just how my brain works. And so, yeah, it's tough to sit there and wonder, is this going to start on time? Is the lighting right? Are the words changing with the music? Is the sound too loud? Is it too soft? Is there dead air between songs and different things. And so, yeah, I can't shut that off, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know the exact feeling. Do you have any tips if somebody forced you to give a tip of how a person who not only have experienced all that and is wired that way, and in some sense, I believe that God even uses that in worship as a person who can help shape a church and keep the ball rolling of releasing the barriers that help people encounter Jesus. But do you have any tips for those of us who are in that world just to be able to worship without thinking?
Well, I wish I could say I've overcome it completely, but I think it just depends on the time. A good, grounded, faithful, loving Christian wife helps a lot. She can keep reminding me, hey, it's not why we're here. We're here to worship, and so that helps a lot. But it's just a mindset. You just got to say, look, Lord, I'm here to worship no matter how the lights look or if the words aren't changing fast enough, and just kind of get it in your mind that concentrate on the music. I personally worship better with the music, and that's kind of sets my heart to where it needs to be. And so just have to jump in and do it.
That's a good answer. I've heard this I've heard this from someone, and I've said it on the podcast a number of times, but I heard a guy say, and it resonated with me, he feels most worshipful when he's in the front or the back. And it's hard for him to be in the middle where he's part of it. And I mean, I could see where you're using your gifts and all those things.
Yeah.
But
that's a good point. Like we sit up front, and that helps me to alleviate distractions. And I can just
sitting up there. I mean, right in front, it's hard to kind of lose your place too much. And I think this guy was talking about in the front as in on stage or
gotcha,
at the soundboard type feel, not in sanctuary. And so depending on who you are and how God has given you gifts, sometimes it almost is easier to worship as the guitar playing, singing song leader for the day. And still you want to find places to be able just to let your hair down and worship. And what I've found most often is those places are in churches that have kind of superseded some of the barriers. They're so large and production oriented that there really aren't many barriers. Even then, sometimes I kind of ooh and ah over that and think about how I could implement some of it. And then the other place is at the extreme opposite, where it is just a guitar and a group sitting around a campfire or at a retreat just singing. And those places I can connect.
Right.
But you mentioned one other thing, and I've not only seen this in a lot of places, but I've experienced it in a lot of places. And we might just wind down with this last practical bit. But song lyrics for a church, you mentioned, are the song words changing quick enough? What is the go-to policy for changing the words of songs and to be in the rhythm?
Well, I think first and foremost, it requires a dedicated volunteer, and they have to pay attention. A lot of times they get distracted with other things and kind of lose their place or whatever. So it just takes somebody who has a heart. And sometimes I look at my church back at the guy who's running the words, and he's literally worshiping. He's got one hand on the mouse and his other hand is raised, and that's cool to see for me, because it's a team to me.
Yeah.
I'm up there playing guitar, but our sound man, our lighting person, our computer person is part of this group, and so that's
awesome.
He is important as well. And plus, he does useful things too, because he'll give us hand signals to say, like, okay, repeat keep going. He circles his finger around and says, okay, repeat the chorus, or he'll put a fist up and say, the song's about to end, and little things like that. And that helps the band too. So those type people are very useful for so many things. So.
Yeah, that's good. And I can see that working both ways too. Somebody's singing along, pretty soon they forget that they're the ones changing the words.
Yes, that happens occasionally too.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Well, sometimes people kind of think the tech team, the media graphic and sound people are sort of a different group, but really they're like the most important part of it. Like if people can't sing along, it really throws everything off. And same with the sound. If it's messed up, they're some of the most important.
Yes, to me, that's they are part of the worship team, and that's how they should be treated, in my opinion. You've got your worship leader, your singers, your band, your sound person, your lighting person, and your computer person. that's running the graphics and all that. That's all one big team. And it's so
Yeah.
important to get together before every service and pray and, pray for there to be no distractions and no technical issues and to be a core, do things outside of the church. Don't just see each other on Sunday mornings or whatever. So become friends and become prayer partners and know each other's family and support each other. And that's, to me, very important.
That is really good. That's a lot of awesome stuff. That's cool.
Yep.
Well, I've been talking to one of really millions unsung heroes in around our nation and world of people who are involved in worship and the church and background and foreground and all other ways. I appreciate just the little bit I've heard of your ministry, Tim. I think it's awesome to have, the church needs people like you and I who are just doing it. And so I think that's great. And one more time for anybody that's just interested, again, back to our original thing where you mentioned the bluegrass stuff you do. They can find all that at the website. And what's the website again?
Yeah, you can find me on my website at timbatts.com, TIMBATTS.com. Everything I'm involved in, from my business to my band to my podcast, is all on there. So love to hear from you. Shoot me a message. So I'd appreciate it.
That's really cool. And we'll definitely have to do some more. But until then, a big thanks to all our listeners today on the Worship Leader Toolbox podcast. Hope a little tidbit that we've just kind of chased here of random practical things in worship ministry has been helpful and inspiring to you and something you might be able to take away and use. And I'll look forward to hearing from you all and talking with you all next time. Until then, keep lifting up the name of the Lord and inviting your church to encounter Jesus and give him glory. And thanks again, Tim, for being a part of this with me today.
Thank you, buddy. I loved it.
Thanks again for joining us. If you have any questions, you can find out more about our ministry by going to worshipleadertoolbox.com. You can also take a quick moment to request access to the Facebook community Worship Leader Toolbox. We'd love to connect there and have you connect with others. As a reminder, we try and share a new podcast episode 2 times a month, most often on Thursday, and we look forward to joining with you next time.